Cole Drayden had been coming to the Galactic Council chamber for 11 years. He knew which chair squeaked. He knew which corner of the ceiling had a slow, light flicker that nobody had fixed in 6 sessions. He knew the exact number of steps from the human delegations table to the main door, 42, because the human table had always been set slightly further back than the others. Not by much, just enough. He had a coffee with him. He always had a coffee. The council found the habit strange. Coffee was a human thing, dark and bitter and taken without ceremony, and Cole drank it through every session the way a man drinks water at a long desk. Not for pleasure. Just to keep going. He sat down. He refilled the cup from the small thermos he kept beside his chair. He looked at the agenda for the day's session, which listed, at item 7 of 12, the Kepler Corridor petition. It was the 14th time they had filed it. The petition was simple. A trade lane, 5 light years of clear corridor that would cut 16 days off standard human cargo routes. It cost the council nothing to approve. It inconvenienced no one. The first time humanity had filed it, back when Cole was still the deputy ambassador and his boss believed very deeply in the power of good faith, the council had smiled and said the matter would be reviewed. That was 6 years ago. Owen Greer slid into the seat to Cole's left. He was 28 from Texas, and had the face of a man who prepared for every possible outcome by writing each one on a laminated card. He had a small stack of them in his jacket pocket at all times. Cole had never asked what was written on them. "See, same agenda," Owen said. "Same agenda," Cole said back. The session opened. It moved the way council sessions always moved, slowly, with ceremony, with the kind of careful patience that very old civilizations perform to remind younger ones how much time they have. Keth Varun of the Vorathi hegemony chaired the session. He was 800 years old and had a voice that filled rooms without effort. He had a way of pausing before he spoke that made whatever came next feel important, even when it wasn't. Item 1. Item 2. Cole drank his coffee. Owen sorted through his laminated cards under the table. By item 5, Cole had refilled the cup. By item 6, he had made a decision. He had made it that morning, technically, after 40 minutes on a comm call with Director Dana Rice back on Earth. And the call had been short for 40 minutes. Most of it was silence on both ends. The kind of silence that means 2 people have already said everything and are just staying on the line because hanging up makes it real. When they did speak, it was quiet and plain. When the call ended, Cole sat in his quarters for a while looking at nothing before he got his coffee and came here. Item 7 arrived. Keth Varun announced it with his full voice, as though the petition were brand new, as though this were the first time humanity had brought it to the table instead of the 14th. He acknowledged the human delegation warmly. He said the council had, of course, given the matter continued consideration. He moved to table the petition pending further review. Cole set his cup down. "We withdraw the petition," he said. The room did not stop. It was not dramatic enough to stop a room, but something shifted. A small tightening of attention across 14 species, the way large animals' ears move before the rest of them react. Keth Varun blinked his secondary eyelids. He did this when something surprised him. Cole had seen it once before, years ago, when a Thalari delegate had spilled a liquid that happened to be the exact color of Vorathi mourning on the council floor. That blink. This blink. Same size. "Ambassador Drayden," Keth Varun said with great patience, "perhaps you mean to say you are withdrawing from today's discussion of the item." "We withdraw the petition," Cole said again. Same tone, no louder, just the same sentence a second time, which landed heavier than the first. A beat, 2 beats. "I'm not sure I understand," Keth Varun said. Cole picked up his coffee. "Yeah," he said. He stood up. He nodded to Owen. Owen stood too, cards in pocket, face the color of something recently drained, and held the door open while Cole walked out at the same pace he walked everywhere. Unhurried, like a man who had nowhere urgent to be and had also already been everywhere worth going. The door closed behind them. In the corridor outside, their footsteps were the only sound. The hallway was long and white and had the flat, colorless light that all council buildings used, the kind that created no shadows and felt like no time of day. Owen walked beside Cole and said nothing for a while. "That's it?" Owen said. "That's it," Cole said. Owen stopped. He looked at his cards. He looked at Cole. "We just withdrew the thing we've been filing for 6 years. 14 times, Cole said. Owen opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "What do we do now?" Cole sipped his coffee. It had gone slightly cold. "We go back," he said. "We do our jobs." Owen pulled out a blank laminated card. He kept a few of those, just in case, and stared at it. Nothing came to him. He put it back. Behind them, through the closed doors, the session continued. It was already on item 8. The gap created by humanity's withdrawal of item 7 had been filled immediately and smoothly, the way water fills any space available to it, without acknowledgement, without pause, just flow. As though the petition had never existed, as though its removal was unremarkable. Cole thought, that was always the problem. That had always been the problem. He drank his coffee in the hallway and did not look back. That evening, the council sent the standard follow-up communique to the human delegation. It was polite. It expressed continued interest in productive relations. It suggested the Kepler corridor petition could be resubmitted at any future session at the delegation's convenience. Nobody answered it. Not that day, not the next. On the third day, Owen drafted a response. He showed it to Cole. Cole read it, folded it in half, and handed it back without a word. Owen understood. He deleted the draft. On the 7th day, a second communique arrived, warmer than the first, more formal in its warmth, which is what very old civilizations do when they are uncertain. They add ceremony where there used to be ease, like decorating a room they are afraid of. And nobody answered that one either. The human station above Mars received a low-priority routing update that week, a cargo manifest, and a birthday message for one of the technicians. All of these were answered promptly and professionally. The council communiques sat in the queue, read, not deleted, not answered, like letters from someone who had not yet understood that letters need to mean something to earn a reply. Cole stood at the window of the delegation office that evening and watched the stars. He had carried a lot of things a long way in his life. He was good at it. The weight had never bothered him much, but some things he had decided that morning on the call with Dana were not his to carry anymore. The council had been holding the petition like it cost them something to put it down. He had decided to stop asking them to. On the corridor, the one they had requested 14 times, was still out there. The stars didn't change. Neither did he. He finished his coffee and went to sleep at a reasonable hour for the first time in months. 37 days passed. Nothing loud happened. That was the thing the council kept coming back to in their closed sessions and their careful private talks. Nothing loud had happened. Humanity had not declared anything, had not blocked any ship, had not denied any port access, had not fired a single weapon or issued a single threat. The human fleet moved in its usual patterns. Carrier groups running their corridors, patrol ships logging their hours, freighters carrying cargo between human systems and the outer trade lanes exactly as they always had. Nothing stopped. Nothing started. The silence was the thing. An Admiral Nora Whitfield was 52 years old and had spent most of those years on ships. That meant she had developed a very clear understanding of silence. She knew the difference between the silence of a ship running well and the silence of a ship about to fail. She knew the silence of a crew that trusted their captain and the silence of a crew that didn't. She had spent a long time learning those differences because in space, the wrong kind of silence could kill you. She stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched 9 carrier groups run coordinated flight drills through the Kepler corridor. Not blocking it, not claiming it formally, just present, moving through it the way water moves through a space it has decided to fill, not by force, just by being there, every single day. Running exercises that looked like routine drills to anyone who didn't know what they were looking for. Nora knew what they were looking for. She had ordered the drills herself. Owen Greer was back on Earth, on administrative assignment, drinking his fourth pot of coffee for the day when the fleet data summary arrived in his inbox. He read it once and went very still. His office neighbor noticed. His office neighbor decided not to ask about it. The summary was clean and professional. Every movement was logged, every transponder was broadcasting, everything followed correct procedure. It looked like nothing. Until you mapped the positions on a chart and understood that 9 carrier groups running coordinated formations inside an unapproved corridor wasn't nothing. It was a sentence written in ship coordinates, sent to no one specifically, and therefore to everyone. Owen wrote a memo, deleted it, rewrote it, deleted it again. He did this 6 times. The version he eventually kept said, in simple terms, that the Admiral was very busy with scheduled exercises. He laminated it. He didn't fully understand why. On day 19, a Varathi diplomatic courier arrived at the human station above Mars. It came in cleanly, broadcast its codes in the correct format, and requested a docking berth and an audience with Ambassador Cole Drayden. The docking team was professional. They assigned the berth. They confirmed the fees. They offered the Wi-Fi password. The courier asked about the ambassador's schedule. The docking tech, a young woman from Oregon, who kept a very cheerful manner and very little tolerance for vagueness, said that the ambassador was currently unavailable. When would he be available? She smiled. She genuinely didn't know. She offered them the vending machine options, which included 3 types of human coffee and something labeled as a granola bar that had been in the machine long enough to have developed its own distinct personality. The courier waited 6 hours. It left without a meeting. A second courier arrived on day 28, a more senior vessel, more formal identification codes. The request for an audience now came with the full title string of Keth Varun's diplomatic office attached, which in Varathi protocol was the equivalent of standing up at a quiet dinner and clearing your throat loudly. Not rude exactly, but very, very pointed. The docking team assigned them a berth, offered the Wi-Fi. The ambassador was unavailable. No timeline could be given. The vending machine had been restocked. The granola bars were new. The second courier waited 4 hours and left faster than the first. Back at the council, the mood in closed sessions had changed in a way that was hard to name, but easy to feel. It was not panic. The Varathi considered panic undignified, but Keth Varun's stillness had taken on a quality that his senior staff had started to notice. He had always been still in a way that said he was in control. He was still in a slightly different way now. The difference was small, and his staff were experienced enough to find it very large. On day 31, Director Dana Rice gave a public statement, 42 words. She delivered it standing at a small podium in the Diplomatic Corps building on Earth, in a plain suit without ceremony. She said that the United Earth Diplomatic Corps was undergoing a structural review of its interstellar commitments and would issue further guidance when appropriate. She thanked the press. She left the podium. 42 words hit the galactic news cycle the way a stone dropped into still water does. Not loud, but the rings keep going. The Council's monitoring services flagged the statement within the hour. Analysts pulled the transcript. Several read it twice. The one analyst, a Thalari woman who had grown up studying human culture as part of her academic work, read it 3 times and wrote in her notes, "They are not coming back on their own." She sent the note up the chain. It reached Keth Varun's desk on day 33. He read it. He looked through the glass panel of his office door at the council chamber, where the human delegation's seat sat empty for the 33rd day in a row. Cole Drayden's coffee cup was still on the table. No one had moved it. At first, it was because no one thought to. Now it was because everyone thought about it and decided not to be the one who did. The cup had become something. He wasn't sure what yet. On day 35, the council commissioned an emergency behavioral analysis on the human diplomatic withdrawal, and the request went to the council's top research division. The division turned the report around in 11 days, which was a record. The analyst who wrote it, a quiet and methodical Selhari named Voss Aaron, had not slept much. The report was 612 pages long. The summary was one paragraph. The last line of the paragraph read, "The relevant human phrase for this behavioral pattern appears to be, 'We are not angry, we are disappointed,' and we have consistently misread their disposition as the former when available evidence suggests it has always been the latter." Keth Varun read the summary twice. He did not read the 612 pages. He didn't need to. He sat at his desk and looked at nothing for a long time. On day 37, Nora Whitfield's fleet filed a routine navigational update from the Kepler corridor. All 9 carrier groups, positions, headings, drill schedules, everything correct, everything logged. No message attached, no statement made, just, "We are here, doing what we are doing, and we wanted you to know." The update went to Galactic traffic control automatically, the same as any human fleet movement. Traffic control forwarded it to the Council monitoring team as a flagged item. The monitoring team forwarded it to Keth Varun's office. His senior aide read it, set it down on his desk without comment, and left the room. He read it without comment. The corridor that the Council had been refusing to formally approve for 6 years was full of human ships, not blocking it, not claiming it in any official document, just present, every day, running their drills, logging their positions, being there the way something becomes part of the landscape, not by announcement, just by not leaving. Keth Varun asked his aide to draft a formal request for dialogue with the human delegation. She asked what tone to use. He said, "Whatever tone means, please." She had never used that tone in 800 years of Council communication. She had to spend a while thinking about what it looked like. She wrote 3 drafts before she found something that felt close. She sent it before she could change her mind. The human delegation received it. Nobody answered that night, but in the morning, Cole Drayden read it at his desk with a cup of coffee and didn't delete it. That was something. Not much, but something. The emergency session was called without a public announcement, which was how you could tell it was serious. Normal council sessions had ceremony, advance notice, formal agendas, the careful performance of civilizations reminding each other how important they were. Emergency sessions had none of that. Just a time, a room, and 14 species walking in with the specific energy of people who had been woken up at an inconvenient hour and were trying very hard not to show it. The human seat was empty. Cole Drayden's coffee cup was still on the delegate table. 42 days, and it had not been touched. Early on, no one moved it, because no one thought to. Now, no one moved it because everyone thought about it and decided they didn't want to be the one who did. It sat there like a quiet question that the room kept avoiding. Keth Varun opened the session. He was composed. Because he was always composed. He used the full formal opening, the complete ceremonial language, everything in its correct order. He gave a speech about unity and the value of open dialogue. It was a carefully made speech. He had given versions of it 200 times across 8 centuries of council work. Halfway through, one of the younger Thalari delegates leaned toward her senior colleague. She was young enough to have grown up reading human books, watching human films, studying human history as part of her training. She had spent a long time learning how humans thought. She said quietly, "I think they're done." Not angry. Done. Her senior looked at her. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to. Keth Varun finished his speech. The room was quiet in a way that was different from the usual formal quiet. Someone near the back coughed. A junior Selhari delegate checked something on his data screen and then put it down without reading it. The discussion that followed was long and went nowhere useful. Species that had been on the council for centuries offered theories. The Vorathi thought it was a negotiating tactic. The Pelhari thought it was an internal political situation that would resolve itself. The Methkaur were not sure what it was, but were confident it would pass. Civilizations older than humanity's entire history of writing sat in a beautifully designed room and agreed, with great confidence, that this was something they had seen before. The young Thalari delegate listened to all of it and wrote 2 words in her notes. They are done. She underlined them. The council commissioned the emergency behavioral analysis on that day, the same one that Keth Varun's aide had already requested, and that Voss Aaron had spent 11 sleepless days writing. The 600-page report arrived. Most people read the summary. The last line of the summary made its way around the council floor quietly, passed from aide to delegate to senior advisor the way uncomfortable truths travel, not announced, just moving from hand to hand until everyone had held it. We have consistently misread their disposition as anger when available evidence suggests it has always been disappointment. Disappointment. Not rage, not threat, not strategy. Disappointment. It was a word that several council species did not have a direct translation for in their own languages, not because they didn't understand the concept, but because in their diplomatic vocabulary, disappointment was something that happened to individuals. It was a small, personal feeling. It was not something a species could carry for 200 years and bring to a council table. They had no word for it at that scale. They were learning one now. On day 46, Dana Rice accepted a comm from the council. Not Cole. Dana. She was at her desk in the Diplomatic Corps building on Earth when the request came through. She looked at it for a moment. She accepted it. She sat with good posture and a calm expression and waited for the connection to stabilize. Keth Varun appeared on the screen. He looked, for the first time in the years Cole had been dealing with him, like someone who had not slept particularly well. He was warm. He was gracious. And he used the correct formal openings and the appropriate honorary titles. He said that the council was deeply interested in maintaining a strong and constructive relationship with humanity, and that he personally valued the long history of cooperation between their peoples. Dana listened. She said, "That's good to hear." Keth Varun said that the council was, he paused here, choosing his word carefully, concerned about the current state of things. Dana said, "We noticed." The pause that followed was not long. 3 seconds, maybe 4. But 3 seconds of silence on a high-level diplomatic comm line is a long time. It has weight. Keth Varun had spent 800 years being the person who decided when silences ended. And he said, "Ambassador Drayden has not been available for contact." Dana said, "The ambassador is managing a full schedule." Keth Varun said, "The council would very much welcome a formal resumption of dialogue." Dana said, "We are still conducting our structural review." Another silence. Keth Varun said, "Is there anything the council can do to—" He paused again. "Support a positive outcome to that review?" Dana looked at him through the screen. She had spent 20 years studying alien languages, all of them, every grammar and idiom the council used. She understood in exact detail what it had cost an 800-year-old Varathi statesman to say those words in that order. She said, "We'll be in touch." She ended the call. She sat at her desk for a while after that. She did not look pleased. She did not look satisfied. And she looked like someone who had done a hard thing correctly and was not entirely sure what came next. Owen Greer was in the corridor outside her office when she opened the door. He was holding a laminated card. She didn't ask what was on it. "Well?" he said. "He said, please," Dana said. Owen stared at her. "Keth Varun. Keth Varun." Owen wrote something on a new laminated card. He held it up. It said, "They blinked." Dana looked at it. "Put that away," she said. He put it away, but he kept it. That evening, news of the comm call moved through the council's staff channels faster than almost any other piece of information had moved in years. The fact that Dana had taken the call, not Cole, Dana, was noted and analyzed and discussed in corridors and over meals. The fact that she had ended it herself, at a time of her choosing, was noted more. The fact that Keth Varun had, by all accounts, said something that, in Varathi diplomatic language, was structurally indistinguishable from a request, was not discussed out loud. Some things are too significant to talk about in the open. The young Thalari delegate updated her notes. She crossed out "they are done" and wrote something underneath it. "They are waiting," she wrote. "They know exactly what they want. They are waiting to see if we will figure out that we are the ones who need to ask." She underlined it twice. She had grown up reading human books. She thought she understood now the particular kind of patience a species builds when it has spent a long time being underestimated by people who should have known better. It was not comfortable patience. It was not patient patience. Yeah, it was the patience of someone who has already decided what they will say when you finally get around to asking. Someone who has been ready for a long time. She closed her notes. Outside the council chamber, in the corridor that connected the main floor to the observation deck, a junior aide from the Pelhari delegation walked past the glass partition and looked in at the human delegation's table. The coffee cup was still there. He had walked past it 11 times in the past week. He kept looking at it the same way. He wasn't sure why. He went back to his desk and did his work. The cup didn't move. Nora Whitfield filed the navigational transit report at 0600 hours. Standard format, standard timing. No flag, no special designation. Just 9 carrier groups logging a transit through the Kepler corridor. Positions, headings, estimated duration, all in the correct fields, all transmitted to Galactic Traffic Control exactly as human fleet regulations required. Textbook, clean, legal in every way that applied. The council had not been asked. Owen Greer was on the bridge of Nora's flagship that morning because Dana Rice had decided, without explaining why, that someone from the diplomatic corps should be present for this particular drill. Owen had packed 3 changes of clothes, 11 laminated cards, and a thermos of coffee that he did not touch because his hands were already unsteady enough. He watched the main display. 9 carrier groups in formation, moving through the corridor in staggered lines, every transponder on, every light broadcasting their identity to anyone who wanted to look. There was nothing hidden about it. That was the point. And it was the least hidden thing Nora had ever done, and it was somehow more alarming for that. "They're watching us," Owen said. He was looking at the secondary sensor panel, where 6 council species had repositioned patrol vessels to the corridor's edges, not weapons hot. Just watching. Recording. "Good," Nora said. She was standing at the front of the bridge with her hands clasped behind her back, looking at the display with the particular stillness of someone who has rehearsed this moment enough times that the actual thing feels almost calm. "They should be watching." Owen pulled out a blank laminated card. He held it. Nothing came to him. He put it back. 40 minutes into the transit, a Vorathi patrol ship opened a comm line to the flagship. The signal was formal and clean. The standard challenge that any military vessel gives when it wants to know what another military vessel is doing in a space it considers sensitive. Nora nodded to her comm officer. The channel opened. The Vorathi officer's voice was steady and professional. He asked their destination. He asked their purpose. He asked under whose authority they were transiting this corridor. Nora answered each question. She was going to waypoint Delta 9 for navigational calibration exercises. Her purpose was the calibration exercise. Her authority was United Earth Naval Command, operating under the direction of the United Earth government, which was not presently a party to any joint council transit agreements because those agreements were part of the ongoing structural review of interstellar commitments. A pause. And the Vorathi officer said that the Kepler corridor had not been formally sanctioned for human transit. Nora said, "We noticed." She nodded to the comm officer. The channel closed. Owen looked at his blank laminated card for a moment. He wrote 2 words on it. He laminated it 3 times, which used up the rest of his lamination film. The card said, "They noticed." He was not sure what he was going to do with it. He kept it anyway. The patrol vessels at the corridor's edge did not move. They stayed at the margins and watched as Nora's fleet completed the transit in full. Every ship in formation. Every light on. When the last carrier group cleared the corridor's far end and filed its completion report, the patrol vessels held their positions for another hour before slowly returning to their standard routes. And they had watched the whole thing. They had no framework for responding to something that broke no rule they had written down. Back at the council, the mood had moved past uncomfortable and arrived somewhere closer to unsettled. The transit report was on Keth Varun's desk within 3 hours of completion. His senior aide had placed it there with a look that communicated more than she intended. He read it standing up, which he almost never did. He set it down. He read it again. 9 carrier groups, full formation, Kepler corridor, everything logged, everything legal, not a request, not a declaration, not a threat, just a fact, placed in the record like a stone set in a wall. He called an immediate closed session, not the full council, just the senior delegates from the 5 oldest member species. No, the ones who had been managing interstellar politics since before humanity had learned to write. They sat in a small room with no ceremony, and Keth Varun placed the transit report in the center of the table. Nobody touched it for a moment. Then the senior Methkar delegate, who was almost as old as Keth Varun and had seen 3 species leave the council in her lifetime, picked it up. She read it. She set it down. She said, "What do they want?" The room was quiet. Keth Varun said, "I have been trying to determine that." The senior Pelhari delegate said they could move to formally dispute the transit. The corridor was technically undesignated. There were legal grounds. Nora's aide, a sharp Selhari attaché who had been added to the session as an observer, made a note and said nothing. The senior Methkar delegate said disputing the transit would require the council to articulate what rule had been broken. She asked if someone could tell her which rule that was. Nobody answered, because nobody had written the rule. The corridor had never been formally designated as anything because the council had never formally voted on the petition that would have designated it. The petition that had been filed 14 times. The petition they had been tabling for 6 years. The absence of a rule was their own. Keth Varun sat down, which he also almost never did in sessions. He folded his hands on the table. He looked at the transit report. He looked at the faces of the 5 oldest diplomatic minds in the known galaxy, and he said, "What is the human phrase?" He paused. "For when you have been outmaneuvered by someone who used only patience and your own inaction." The Thalari delegate, who had grown up studying human language, said quietly from her chair in the corner, "They call it being played." Keth Varun looked at her for a long moment. "Yes," he said. "That." No one spoke for a while after that. Owen Greer, far away on a ship in the corridor that now existed as a practical fact, whether the council liked it or not, was standing at the observation window watching the stars go by. The transit was complete. The ships were running post-drill checks. Everything was proceeding correctly. He had 3 laminated cards in his pocket now. The blank one, the one that said they blinked, the new one that said they noticed. He thought about making a 4th one, but decided to wait and see what happened next. Nora came to stand beside him at the window. She didn't say anything for a while. "What happens now?" Owen said. Nora looked at the corridor behind them, the stars in a long, clean line, the space that had always been there, and that human ships were now moving through as a matter of routine record. "Now they have to decide," she said. "Decide what?" "Whether the thing they want more is to be right," she said, "or to have us back in the room." Owen looked at the stars. He thought about the empty seat, the coffee cup, the 14 petitions, the 42 steps from the human table to the door. "They can't have both?" he said. Nora said, "Not anymore." She walked back to the command section. Owen stayed at the window a little longer. And the stars were very far away and very still, the way they always were, the way they would always be regardless of what any civilization decided in any room. He thought that was either comforting or frightening, and wasn't sure which. He made a 4th laminated card. It said, "Wait." He kept that one in his front pocket, closest to hand. Cole Drayden came back on a Tuesday. No announcement, no advance communique, no formal notification to the council scheduling office. He simply arrived at the chamber door on a Tuesday morning with a cup of coffee and a 14-page document, nodded to the security attendant who had been working that door for 12 years and recognized him immediately, and walked to the human delegations table. He sat down. His coffee cup was still there from 51 days ago. Someone had, at some point, cleaned it, and he noticed that. He set his new cup beside the old one and looked at the agenda screen. His name was not on the agenda. He had not asked to be on it. The session that morning was a routine one, minor trade adjustments, a boundary clarification in the outer systems, a procedural vote on archive formatting that had been tabled for 2 years. The sort of session that ran itself. Delegates drifted in. Junior aides sorted their materials. Someone near the back laughed at something quietly, and then stopped when they noticed Cole sitting at the human table, both hands around his coffee cup, looking at nothing in particular. The room did not stop, but it changed. Word moved fast in the way that word always moves in rooms full of experienced political people. Not through speaking, just through the quality of attention shifting. I'd like a change in air pressure before weather arrives. By the time Keth Varun walked in, every senior delegate already knew. Keth Varun saw Cole. Cole looked up. He slid the 14-page document across the table in Keth Varun's direction. Not all the way, just far enough that it was clearly an offer rather than a demand. "When you have a moment," Cole said. Keth Varun picked up the document. The session proceeded. Nobody pretended Cole wasn't there, but nobody addressed him directly either, because addressing him directly would require knowing what to say, and nobody had yet figured that out. Cole drank his coffee. He refilled it once from his thermos. He did not look at anyone in particular. He looked like a man who had been somewhere difficult and come back with something to say and was in no rush to say it. And after the session closed, Keith Varun asked Cole to stay. Cole stayed. The room emptied until it was the two of them and their respective aides, Owen on Cole's side, sorting his laminated cards into a new order for no particular reason, and the long table between them, and the 2 coffee cups, one old and one new, side by side at the human seat. Keth Varun had read the 14 pages during the session. He had read them without looking up once. He set them on the table now with both hands, the Vorathi gesture for giving something weight. He read the whole document again before he spoke. Cole waited. He was good at waiting. On page 4, there was a line that Keth Varun had underlined in his mind the first time and came back to now. 4 words, clean margin. No explanation attached, because no explanation was needed. Equal seats. Equal heights. Not a demand for anything elaborate or revolutionary. Not a restructuring of the whole council. Just, the human table sits at the same level as every other table, and the human chairs are the same size as every other chair, and the distance from the human delegation to the main door is the same as the distance from any other delegation to the main door. 42 steps, no more. Keth Varun looked up from the page. He asked in plain speech, not the formal register, not the diplomatic language of 1,000 years of council tradition, just words, whether humanity would truly have stayed gone. Cole refilled his coffee. He said, "Well, here we are." Keth Varun looked at him for a long time, 800 years old, and he found that he was learning something he had not expected to learn, that sometimes an answer can go sideways around a question and still land squarely in the truth of it. The answer to his question was in the 2 coffee cups, in the 42 steps, in the corridor full of human ships that had required no permission, in 51 days of silence that had been louder than anything anyone in this room had said out loud in 200 years. He did not say any of that. He said, "The council will need time to review the terms." Cole said, "We'll be here." 11 days of closed sessions followed. Owen Greer attended 5 of them. He came out of each one looking like a man who was keeping his expression very carefully managed, which he was. He updated his laminated cards after every session and had, by day 7, run out of room and started a second set. On day 11, the council adopted 12 of the 14 pages. The remaining two, one about Joint Operational Command Authority, one about vote waiting on resource petitions, were tabled for a future session. Not indefinitely tabled. Tabled with a date. An actual date attached, 3 months out, on the formal schedule. Owen made a laminated card that said, "Pending with a deadline." He laminated it 4 times. He kept it in his front pocket. The corridor confirmation came through that same day. The Kepler corridor, formerly designated as a shared transit lane, open to all species, administered under a joint framework. The petition that humanity had filed 14 times was approved in the same motion, amended to reflect the new joint framework language, and entered into the council record. And it took 11 minutes to vote on. 3 other species had filed their own corridor petitions in the weeks since Nora's transit. The council approved all 3 in the same session. It turned out that moving quickly was possible when it became necessary. It had always been possible. That evening, Dana Rice sat alone in her office and looked at the new council charter on her screen. The human delegation was listed in its correct alphabetical position. The seat specifications in the architectural addendum showed equal dimensions across all delegations, equal heights. She did not smile. She looked at it for a long time. She closed the screen. She got her coat. She turned off her office light and walked down the hall, and the lights went off one by one behind her as she went, each one cutting out at the motion sensor's edge. And then the building went quiet. She went home. Nora's fleet was still in the corridor. Nobody had asked them to leave. Nobody was ready to ask, and Nora had not offered. The corridor hummed now with transit traffic from 4 species, freighters and science vessels and small diplomatic couriers moving through the space that had been empty before, that had always been there and always been available and had simply never been approved. Owen Greer sat in his quarters on the flagship and looked at his collection of laminated cards spread out on his bunk. He had 14 of them now. He thought that was an interesting number. He did not put them in any particular order. He just looked at them for a while. Through the porthole above his bunk, the corridor was lit with the running lights of passing ships, different colors, different designs, and all moving in the same direction, all using the same space. He thought about the 42 steps. He thought about a coffee cup that had sat on a table for 51 days because no one wanted to be the one who moved it. He thought about 14 petitions and 6 years and the particular kind of tired that Cole carried in the way he held his coffee. 2 hands, careful, like something he didn't want to spill. He picked up the blank laminated card. He still hadn't written anything on it. He held it for a while. Then he put it back in his pocket and turned off the light. The corridor was still there when he woke up, still lit, still full of ships moving through the space that was theirs now, officially, on paper, with a date attached. Some things take a very long time to be given. Some things you have to go get yourself. The both things were true. Both things had always been true. Cole Drayton drank his coffee and knew both things at the same time, and he was tired in a way that wouldn't fix itself quickly, and he was not sorry for any of it. He set the cup down and went back to work.